Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Travis, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Sergeant Pepper.
Hey, everybody.
Oh,
I'm surprised you didn't say Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig. Um, I'm just gonna start doing that from now on. It's just you didn't even notice that I changed your name in the show notes.
No, I did not. I did not. See, I was so focused on my own notes, I didn't even look at yours.
I changed your name to Sergeant Pepper on there. Oh man. So yeah, today is going to be a fun day, a fun episode that we are still recording ahead because of me moving to a new house. So it's just been a crazy weekend.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, it has been definitely. And I'm really excited to do this episode because this is our second film in what is it? Titans of Toho month that we're doing this month.
Yes, the Titans of Toho. Yeah, I forgot to mention that in the last episode that we did where we reviewed a movie. But for July, we are doing the Titans of Toho, which means it's Toho movies that are not your typical Godzilla movies. The ones that are not the big Godzilla Mothra Rodan ones.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing that today. We're continuing that today, and we're going to be continuing that next week too.
Atragon was a lot of fun. It was a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to today's episode also.
Yeah. Before we get into anything, I just have to say I have nowhere. I don't know where to put this in the episode because this is such a random thing. So I'm just saying it right off the bat. So I keep little notes and stuff so that if like I'm in laying in bed, I get an idea for the podcast or something podcast related, I'll just put it in my phone. And I have a note in my phone that was from a couple of days ago that says Jet Jaguar, Megalon's butt. And it took me a second to remember what that was about. And I remembered what it was.
Well, wait, hang on. Hang on. You said you were laying in bed when you got this episode, or you got this idea, or whatever it was. So, Travis, do we really want to know what you were thinking about before you tell us?
Well, this gives everyone a glimpse into how my mind works. So I'm laying in bed, and I'm thinking. So Jet Jaguar has the power to grow gigantic. He starts off the size of a human, and becomes the size of Godzilla. So all he had to do to defeat Megalon was just fly up Megalon's butt and grow gigantic. Boom.
Oh boy. Okay.
Like just fly right up Megalon's butt when he's small, and then grow gigantic and just pow.
Let that
flat.
Okay, to all the audio listeners out there, just let that sink in just for a second. Just let the image of Jet Jaguar starting off itty bitty teeny tiny as a human size, and then growing big and gigantic to turn himself into a kaiju enema. I mean, come on.
I think I have the idea for our next Kaiju Clash.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. Well, that out of the way. Because we are recording ahead of time, we don't actually have any news items to talk about this week. I'm sure there is news happening in the world of giant monster movies, but this episode is being recorded 2 weeks in advance, so we are not aware of anything. I'm sure Godzilla vs. Kong has been delayed probably 3 more times since the last time
and there's probably been some more Mill Creek releases announced for the Ultraman series, and as always the internet has probably freaked out about something that was ridiculous to freak out about. So
Yeah, we found
such
out
is
that
the
the
nature.
Loch Ness, we found out the Loch Ness monster is real, and all that kind of stuff.
This maybe actually be a fun thing to do here, really quick. Just what news do you think would happen in the future? Like, let's future Mike and future Travis are projecting, or are in the future, or we're living out the present. Right? How does this work? We're recording in the past.
We've got to go back to the future.
So, my prediction is, it is 2020 after all, and there is a dust storm called Godzilla heading for the United States. It turns out it actually is Godzilla, and we're all dead.
Yeah,
That's really dark. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I'm on the side of. I mean, we had those pictures taken recently that were all over Twitter of something in Loch Ness. So I predict that sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks we find out that the Loch Ness monster is real.
Yes. And was it the photo of? It looked like, or was it a photo? Was it a Photoshop that I saw? Maybe it was the Loch Ness monster with Bigfoot riding on top of it, or something like that. It was some kind of meme or some kind of GIF that I saw the other day. Of course,
Yeah,
I could have dreamed it too. I have really weird dreams, so who knows?
Yeah, well, it's 2020. You never know. That's nothing is far fetched at this point in in the year.
2020 is very unpredictable. I was hoping just for kind of just the usual, dot zero release of a century, or a decade, as you will, and just kind of just puttering along and just being just doing our thing, just living our lives, and nope, not at all. 2020 decided to give us our own kaiju size enema.
Yep. So before we get into the main topic for this week, since we don't have any news items, I thought it would be fun if we played a little game here instead of
hang on. You
reading
didn't
the
tell me
news.
about this. You didn't tell me about this.
Aha. So you didn't have time to study for this one.
You were supposed to run this by me. Anytime you make changes to the show format, you're supposed to tell me in advance.
I made an executive decision.
Oh,
Kurt Russell.
All right.
That's a movie. Anyway, so yeah, the name of this game, I don't know if I like the name, but this is just what I'm going to call it for now. It's Guess the Bad Review. So
this sounds fun. Okay.
So this is now we're not here to argue with people about their opinions on things. We're not here to criticize people for their opinions or whatever. But so we're just gonna have fun, just kind of just have fun. But I'm just
warning you now, Travis. Every answer is gonna be Carnosaur.
Well, I went on to, so here's how it works. I went on to Letterboxd and I chose specific movies and looked for and this is all they're all gonna be Godzilla movies. So that tells you they're all Godzilla movies. And I picked one of the lowest scoring or lowest rated like starred reviews on Letterboxd, and picked some really funny ones because the way Letterboxd is, any kind of crazy person can post on there anytime they want. I mean, just look at the fact that Eric and Alex are on there from Monsters vs. Men.
I know, they just let any old body on that platform. I mean, come on.
So I'm going to read a few of them to you.
Okay.
I think I have.
Whoa, hang on, before we get started, am I allowed to ask for clues, or do I just have to go in completely blind?
I mean, it's more fun if you go in completely blind, but there's at least one or two that you're going to have to ask clues for, but most of them I think are going to be pretty obvious.
Okay. All right, let's do
this.
So
they're just fun. Now these are real reviews from people. Now I took out the only changes I made to these reviews. I took out the actual titles of the movies and things like that. So things that in character names that would give it away too easily. Okay, so I think I have 6 of these, so I'll go through 6 of them, and a few of them are really short. Okay, so the first one. No thank you with it being black and white. Makes it too old-fashioned for me. I did see only clips of it, then I was bored. So what Godzilla movie do you think
Okay, so that narrows it down to 2 because there are only 2 black and white
Mhm.
Godzilla films. So I've got a 50-50 shot here. I'm gonna go with the way the nature of the internet and the way I know people are. I'm gonna say Gojira.
Yep, it was Gojira. Yeah. So this person hadn't even seen the movie. They just saw clips and they said they were so boring and it was too old fashioned, and they felt the need to give us that review.
Hmm.
All right.
I bet that review came from Eric.
Too old fashioned. All right. So here's an easy one, and it's a short one.
Okay.
The woman say Kong a lot. Probably the best thing about the film.
Uh,
What is with people?
read that one more time.
Okay. The woman say Kong a lot. Probably the best thing about the film.
Okay, so that gives me a 50-50 shot. 50. Oh, wait, you said they're all Godzilla films, though. Okay.
Godzilla, yeah.
Well, duh, okay. King Kong versus Godzilla, obviously.
Yep. I love that. Like this 1-star review of Godzilla, King Kong versus Godzilla. The woman say Kong a lot. Like, yeah.
If I had forgotten that point about them being Godzilla movies, I would have guessed King Kong Escapes, because in that movie she's like, "No, Kong, no."
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
But it's just like, I mean, Kong is in the movie. Of course the characters are going to say it a lot. Oh,
yeah,
man.
of course.
So that's 2 of them, right, that we've done so far. Okay.
Okay.
Here's another one. I am so bored of these. A film with 3 monsters, aliens, love triangles, and cyborgs has no right to be this boring. Ugh, bring on the 80s. I don't think anybody has said bring on the 80s since the 80s.
Read that one more time.
I am so bored of these. A film with 3 monsters, aliens, love triangles, and cyborgs has no right to be this boring. Ugh, bring on the 80s.
Okay. So, it has to be Invasion of the Astro Monster or Invasion of Astro Monster.
No.
What?
This one
come on.
This one is from Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Oh no, God. Okay,
3
you're
monsters,
right.
aliens, love triangles, and cyborgs.
Oh, I should have daggone it.
And bring on the 80s because it was the last film until the 80s.
Okay, yeah,
So,
I should have latched on to that last little bit of bring on the 80s. Like, who asks for the 80s?
We're putting a lot of logic to these
Oh boy,
really
okay.
weird ones. So
that's 2-1. 2-1.
So here's another short one. It's 1 sentence long, and I'm sure you're going to get it, but it just says more like destroy all prints of this movie.
Well, it's obviously Carnosaur.
I just love this. I love what people who give like 1 sentence reviews on Letterboxd are the best.
They are. And you know, half these people haven't even probably watched the movie, or if they have watched a movie, they've probably only watched maybe 10 minutes of the movie and immediately decided they didn't like it and then cut it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's obviously All Monsters Attack. Come on.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's Destroy All Monsters.
What? Someone hated Destroy All Monsters? What's wrong with these people?
I know. I specifically chose that one because I was like, I know that Michael's gonna be.
I love Destroy All Monsters. I sincerely love Destroy All Monsters. I wish we would go ahead and review it, but you told me we're not allowed to review another Godzilla movie so close together. So
yeah, not too close together. Okay, so here's another one. This ties into exactly what you just said about people on the internet. And this one you're going to need clues for because I don't think you're going to get it just from the review.
Okay.
So here's the review. This is a real review that's on Letterboxd.
This is probably a real winner too.
Oh yeah. I've never actually seen this movie and probably never will. I just needed something to log in place of Tales from Genesis Space, which we watched on a Rabbit stream, but doesn't exist on this website. So now here we are.
Okay.
This person didn't even watch the movie. They're just like, well, I just wanted to put something on for this other movie, but it's not on the website, so I'm just going to put this here.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
I've never actually seen this movie and probably never will. I just needed something to log in place of Tales from Genesis Space. I don't even know what that is.
I hate people. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna need clues for this. You're right.
It's one of my favorite Showa era.
I was gonna
Godzilla.
ask you what era it's from. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite Showa era Godzilla films.
Okay. I'm trying to think of what you've told me is your all-time favorite Showa era Godzilla films. Oh God.
Knowing me, knowing which monsters and kaiju I like the most, which one do you think?
Man. Okay. That still doesn't quite narrow it down.
And the actor who I really like too.
Well, okay. I know you love Takarada, so that narrows it down to a movie that Takarada was in. So that's like what?
Like 12.
I was gonna say 8 or 9 films.
But also, besides Godzilla, who is my favorite kaiju that I've mentioned?
You mean those SOBs wrote that for Mothra versus Godzilla from 64?
1964, Mothra versus Godzilla.
Come on.
I love it. I love it so much. People are so dumb.
I had this sneaky feeling that they put that on there. They put that review on a movie that's actually good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, I'm never going to see this movie, but I just had to I had to have a placeholder for this other movie that's not on this website.
That person is now canceled.
It's so bad. Okay, here's another short one. And it tells, so this person is an absolute wordsmith. They didn't need more words to describe exactly what's wrong with this film, because they really get down to the meat and the heart of it in a simple sentence. The biggest problem with this film is that it's terrible.
Oh, wow. That's,
the biggest problem with this film is that it's terrible.
I'm not gonna ask for any context clues at all. I'm not gonna ask for any clues. I'm just gonna throw a shot in the dark out here. All monsters attack.
Nope. It's Godzilla versus Gigan.
Oh, come on, people.
How many is that we've done so far? 1, 2.
I think we should be on our last one.
Okay, so we've got one more, and this one's a long one. I'm sorry for anybody who finds this tedious, but this person who wrote this review went on a journey. And I gotta read this to you. This is the most fascinating thing I have ever read.
Okay, all right.
So here's their review that they put on public on Letterboxd.
Okay.
I had a bad day. My coffee was bad, work was loud and gross, and I'm mad at myself because I allowed myself to fall behind on my workout routine by nearly 3 months, effectively hitting the reset button, and now my butt is all but deflated. I did not want to watch this movie, especially after a crap day with dysphoria hitting me hard. Why do this to myself? Why not put on something I haven't seen before, or Fantastic Mr. Fox? That always makes me happy. But I did it anyway, and you know what? I'm glad I did. Because if I can force myself to sit through this disrespectful pile with an American actor and wisecracking dickhead military grunts inserted in, all of the important parts chopped up or excised completely, and re-edited to move so fast you're wondering how Godzilla ended up in a volcano by the end, I can certainly force myself to work out every other day so I can have a fat butt. This person went on a journey. I swear.
Sweet Jesus!
They went on a journey. There's a whole story behind all this.
You obviously stole that from Alex's Letterboxd account.
Exactly, Alex.
Alex, you need to get your fat butt in line.
Yeah. he needs to do more workouts because his butt's getting deflated and he has to work it out.
Oh, God.
I love it. It just starts off with how bad their day was. Like, I had a bad day. My coffee was bad. The coffee was bad. That's how bad the day was. The coffee was bad.
Oh, sweet Jesus. The words were getting stuck in my throat.
Maybe
Oh.
maybe put on a movie something else. Maybe something like Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Which is terrible in itself.
Yeah, just so what
Oh,
this
the
person,
irony.
this
Oh,
person.
Jesus.
I love this
Okay.
person.
All right, I got to get composed here for a second. All right, I got to bring it home. Okay, I'm gonna have to ask for context clues here.
Okay. Well, in the thing it said it said, if I'm glad I did, because if I can force myself to sit through this disrespectful pile with an American actor and wisecracking dickhead military grunts inserted in, all the important parts chopped up or excised completely and re-edited to move so fast you're wondering how Godzilla ended up in a volcano by the end, I can certainly force myself to work out every other day so I can have a fat behind.
Oh, come on. They wrote that about 1984.
19 well, it's actually 1985 because it's the
Well,
American
85.
cut.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sorry, Kaiju Nerd. That screwed that up because Raymond Burr was in 85, not 84.
they wrote that about Godzilla in 1985.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Okay.
I love it.
Travis, I'm done. I'm not doing this podcast anymore because if there are people like this out there, I'm just not even going to bother.
Oh man, it just all comes back to the things that I keep saying about our podcast. It's one of the things that I really, really push forward with our podcast. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We just don't. And yeah, I post my reviews on Letterboxd. And if people don't like the reviews or disagree with my views or whatever, that's fine. My thing is when people get pedantic, it's like, how, I can't believe that you gave this movie 3 stars, but the other one 5 stars. And it's like, it's just movies. It's just movies.
Yeah. Oh,
so
now, okay. So let me just piggyback off of that. I had a really good conversation with David the other day, and David of the Kaiju Apostle, for anybody who doesn't know. And he gave us a little bit of pushback on mine and your episode for the Kaiju Groupie podcast, where we kind of talked about how they're just movies and stuff like that, which he said that, he actually mentioned about how, what if we can't pull some deeper meaning out of these movies, then what's the point? And I totally get that. You can, even out of the worst movies, you can probably pull some kind of meaning out of it. But for the purposes of this podcast, we just like to look at the lighter side. And I know a lot of folks out there, they watch these movies to be more of an escapist platform or escapist media. And we just like to have fun with it. And I'm not rebuking David or anything. I'm just saying that there are both sides. So there are both sides to this conversation.
Well, here's the thing. We will pull out themes and stuff. I mean, we have themes that we're going to talk about with the movie that we're reviewing today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We did it with Atragon.
Mm-hmm.
Atragon, there were some really deep things in there that we talked about. So yes, there are times when we do that, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And I think that if you watch movies to find the deeper meaning in things, that is perfectly fine. Films and movies are a form of art, and a person can go. You can have 3 different people who go to a museum, an art museum, and they can look at a painting on the wall. One person's looking at the technical side of it. They're like, oh, isn't it neat how he used this brush stroke instead of that brush stroke, or how this is used to add this perspective to the picture instead of this way, or isn't it neat how he mixed these particular colors and these particular elements to get this vibrancy out of it? Somebody can do that. You can have a person who says, look at the deeper meaning of what's in the picture, what it represents, how the painter felt when they painted it. And then you can have a third person who says, this is just a beautiful painting. I would love to hang that up in my living room. And none of them are wrong. They're each enjoying it in their own way. And I think that is a fun thing about films, is we can all enjoy films in our own way. And even in your podcast episode that I was on, when I said that we shouldn't take these movies too seriously, we need to keep them, we need to, which I think the words we used, we need to keep them in the right place. It wasn't saying you can't dig deep into them and really dive deep into the themes. It's not that. It's what I meant when I said that was that we have to remember that our identity is not governed by the films that we watch. And if we take them too far, if we become unbalanced in how we view films, then that's when we start getting aggressive towards each other, where it's like, how dare you not like this movie that I like? And that's what I think, that's what, we were talking about, trying to stay positive. That was the theme of that episode, was trying to stay positive. And so that was my way of saying how to stay positive, is to remember these are just movies. Yeah, they're beautiful pieces of art. You can enjoy them. I love Godzilla as much as anybody else does. But that doesn't mean it's not just a movie. And that doesn't mean I'm going to go and attack someone else and become negative because of this movie that's just a movie. So I think that David might have been maybe taking what we were talking about in the wrong way, because I don't have a problem with what him and some of the other podcasts do about diving deeper into it.
Yeah.
But with this podcast, I like that we don't take ourselves, and it's not that we don't take the films seriously. We take the film seriously. Like I said, this film that we're talking about today, I take very seriously. We don't take ourselves too seriously.
Oh yeah, and I think that's where it comes. I think it just comes down to how serious you take yourself, and how much of your identity is wrapped up in these films. I think we even referenced what they said in that episode where we talked about you're more than even your passions, and that comes from a conversation I had the pleasure of having with David and Chris a few weeks ago on their show. And it just kind of comes down to how seriously you take yourself. But it was just a critique that I wanted to mention just really quickly that I thought was kind of important to bring up, since we were talking about not taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
As per the usual. As per the usual. That was a really fun segment, Travis. Thank you.
I'm going to bank up some more of those. When I'm going through them, I'm not looking for reviews that I disagree with or I think are unfair, because people have their opinions. If it's an opinion, one that is obviously, I may not agree with their opinion, but it's still an opinion one, that's fine. The ones that make me laugh are the ones where it's like there's something else going on behind the scenes, or they're just so silly, like that one that says that girl says Kong a lot. Like, yeah, they do. I mean,
it's even in the title.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, King Kong is in the movie. So stuff like that. So I'll never.
It's fine.
I'll never devolve. It'll never devolve into criticizing other people's opinions on films, because that's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into our main topic. We're taking a while to get there.
No, that was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll be doing a little more of these little segments just like that one. Hopefully you guys find that kind of stuff entertaining. If you do, let us know by tweeting at us or emailing us, because we always want your feedback.
Yeah. Kaiju Weekly on Twitter and kaijuweekly@gmail.com. All right. So the trivia question we asked last week, which we didn't get any answers, because we're recording ahead of time. So if anybody answered this trivia question, we're sorry we can't give you a shout out, but thank you so much for contributing to the trivia each week. I know a lot of the people who do answer every week. So I want to thank everybody who does that, even if we're not giving you a shout out this week. But the question was, which dueling kaiju film does Quentin Tarantino, Brad Pitt, and Nicolas Cage consider to be influential on their careers? And of course, the answer is War of the Gargantuas from 1966.
Yes, considered to be one of Honda and Toho's best films.
Yes, definitely. And speaking of which, the cast and crew, it was directed by Ishiro Honda, starring Kinji Sahara, Kumi Mizuno, Russ Tamblyn, with his Japanese voice actor Goro Masumi, Jun Tazaki, Haruo Nakajima as Gaira, and Hiroshi Sakita as Sanda. And the plot breakdown, as soon as I scroll down a little bit, is a green monster has appeared from the sea and goes on a rampage across Japan. The military scrambles to stop the beast, believed to be an escaped Frankenstein, quote unquote, being studied by a team of scientists. Not believing that their Frankenstein could cause such destruction, the scientists seek to find the real origins of the green monster. When the good Frankenstein finally appears, the two beasts begin an epic battle. So, let's get into our opening thoughts of this movie. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, the words are just getting stuck in my throat. I don't know why, but the words are getting stuck in my throat. Okay, anyway, I'm enough fooling around. Enough fooling around. Anyway, okay, so I really like this film. I really do. It's probably one of my favorite classic Toho films. Now there are a lot of Toho films that I love, but War of the Gargantuas, I would even put that above, especially after watching it for the this is not my second time, but after watching it, this time for the show,
Mm-hmm.
I think I even put it, I know I put, Frankenstein Conquers the World pretty high on my list of non-Godzilla kaiju films, but I think I'm going to have to put War of the Gargantuas just slightly above it, just because of sort of the conversation you and I got to have behind the scenes and the conversation we're going to be having in the next, say, hour or so. But yeah, I really love this film. It's great tokusatsu. The score is great. The acting is good. Most of the acting is great. There are dark spots that we'll touch on.
Yeah.
But overall, I love this movie. I really do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I love this movie. It is a fantastic, just spectacular kaiju film, tokusatsu film. And for anyone who's not familiar with kaiju films and is trying to get into giant monster movies and tokusatsu, that, suitmation movie, this is definitely one to add to the top of your list, because this one is everyone minus one or two people, but everyone in the crew, Ishiro Honda, Ifukube, all of these ones, they were firing on all cylinders with this one. This is like some of their best work in the genre is in this film. Even Haruo Nakajima, this is like he's done so many great performances as all these different kaiju, and I think this is probably his best performance in any of them. So,
right.
Yeah, this is definitely a highlight of the genre that people definitely should check out. And if you're already a fan of it, go watch it again anyway, because it's just that good.
Yeah, I mean the Gargantu cast
Yeah,
named their entire program after this movie, so it does have a following, and it goes well beyond even the cult, just the sort of the low budget cult following that I thought it had.
why
Growing
didn't
up,
we have them on this episode?
I don't know. We didn't think far enough ahead.
I didn't
honestly,
think far enough ahead to actually get them on to talk about this.
It would have been a lot of fun. Chris Cole, if you guys listen, we wish we would have had you. We wish that we would have had the forethought months in advance to have you guys on, and we apologize. Anyway, but yeah, I didn't know about this movie for years. Like growing up as a Godzilla fan, I think we talked about it in an earlier episode, where in the United States we only got a select few growing up in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s. We got mainly Showa era Godzilla films like Terror of Mechagodzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla. We didn't even get King Kong versus Godzilla for several years. And I remember this movie would come on either super early in the morning or really late at night, which is probably super early in the morning. And it would always be just sort of this cult. I'd heard of it. I knew it existed, sort of, because I'd read and heard references to it. And I'd heard, and this movie has a lot of the stock footage that we come to know now as stock footage. But then it was, for this film, this is where a lot of those scenes that Toho reused for other movies got started. This is the movie where we first get introduced to the Mazers, which is now a very common thing that we would see going forward in Godzilla and Tokusatsu films.
Yeah.
Are the Mazers.
And it's one of my favorite like weapons, anti-kaiju weapons in the Toho library. I love the Mazers, and knowing that this is where they came from and started was really cool.
Yeah, this film, like I said, I didn't know about it for a long time, and I'm glad I do now, because I think I watched this one. I watched it maybe 5 or so years ago. Is the first time I had ever had the opportunity to sit down and actually watch it, because up until, say, the Criterion Channel has it on their subscription service. You can find it now on sites like archive.org, and I think you can even find it on like a bootleg. It has a bootleg DVD release by now at this point too. You can find it, but a few years ago, it was pretty much non-existent. You had to go to probably the ends of the earth almost to actually find this movie.
Yeah. The first time I found out about this movie, I was like you. I'm a Godzilla fan. I didn't really branch out beyond that, and this just wasn't on my radar ever. There was a time period it wasn't for very long, but there was a time period when a lot of the Showa era Godzilla movies got put onto Netflix. Like in the early days of Netflix, when it was, when it was just starting out as a streaming service. And this was one of them that got put on there. And I had never heard of it. And I was like, oh, what is this? And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what this is. But yeah, so that was the first time I had ever really even found out that this movie existed. And I am so glad that I know it exists now, because I have so many things. When we get into likes and dislikes, I have so many positive things to say about it. But so because we're just going to spend a long time talking about the positives, I know it. Let's just get the dislikes, the negatives out of the way.
Do we have to?
Yeah, let's go ahead, because no movie is perfect.
Okay.
No movie is perfect.
All right, let's rip the Band-Aid off.
So the singing. The singing in this is so bad, but the thing is, I don't think it's that the woman who was singing it was bad. It's more that it was a bad recording of it, because the singing that you hear in it is not the woman who's on stage singing. It's been recorded, it's been dubbed over. And whoever dubbed it over, it sounded like they were talking in a tin can. It was so bad. It was so poorly recorded and dubbed over. It's like you could have just left the original one, and it probably would have sounded just as good as what they gave us.
Now, tell me this, Travis. Is that you probably know? And I'm sorry, I forgot to look it up before we got on the recording today. But isn't the lady that's the lady that's singing the song? Isn't she actually an actual recording artist? Am I not mistaken about that?
She might be. I actually didn't look her up.
I know that Chris and Cole did a whole episode on War of the Gargantuas, and I think they may have brought it up, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't recall, because it's been several months back. Yeah,
I'm not seeing her. Oh, yeah.
While you look that up, yeah, you're right. Yeah, the singing was a little bit. It was awkward. Let's just put it that way. I think you're right. That what really hurts it is the recording itself, because you can obviously tell that it was pre-recorded. It was not recorded there on stage in the sound stage. as this movie was being filmed. It was dubbed into the film after the fact, and whatever version of that recording they had was not very good. Now, I'm not saying that the song was good, period. I think I just, I don't like the song. And really, and to a point, it doesn't even make sense for them to put it there, or at least let it linger there for as long as they did. If anyone, now this is how I feel about it. If anyone should have been eaten, probably her. Should have
Yeah.
been eaten just because of the song. I know that sounds mean, but yeah.
Oh, by the way, her name is Kip Hamilton. She
Oh
was
yeah.
she was an actress, singer, and model. She excuse me. She did a lot of work basically on like little movies and TV shows. Nothing super duper noteworthy.
Mhm.
The most noteworthy thing for me is she's Carol Burnett's sister-in-law.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, and she died actually relatively young from breast cancer.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. But yeah, she is Kip Hamilton. She's Carol Burnett's sister-in-law, and she was an actress and singer and model.
And the reason we wanted to bring that up is because when people talk about, for the most part, people talk about this film fairly fondly. It ranks really high on a lot of
Oh yeah.
kaiju tokusatsu fans' radar. But when they do talk about the negatives for this movie, the song comes up a lot as one of the major negatives, which it's really not a major negative, which kind of is a testament to how good this movie is if they're picking a random song as one of their negatives. But there is another negative that is blaringly obvious.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to bring it up.
Yeah, it's blaringly obvious. It's the really terrible acting by Miss Kumi Mizuno.
Oh,
I mean, come on.
oh, my heart. Oh, my heart. Oh, you can't say that kind of stuff, even as a joke. You can't even joke about that.
I'm joking. Okay, I'm joking. We are obviously talking about that block of wood, Rust Hamlin. And let me tell you, Travis, there is a very good reason why the martini that's served at the King Shiza's palace on Monster Island is called the Rust Hamlin, because it's a extra dry martini. And Nathan himself told me that the only reason they keep that thing on the menu is out of pity.
Yeah. Russ Hamlin's acting in this is so bad, and you really get the sense of he just doesn't want to be in this movie. He feels
He didn't. He didn't. If you read the Ishiro Honda biography, it does mention Russ in it, and him and Honda did have conflicts. So by the time it was all over, they just didn't like each other.
Yeah.
They just did not like each other at all, and it shows because his acting is subpar. He's not even putting any feeling into it. One moment that really stood out to me was when it was toward the end of the film. It was like the last, I want to say like 15 minutes, when Gaira picks up Miss Mizuno and drops her back onto the steps. He just casually walks over, picks her up, and then casually walks down the steps like there's not a 50-meter tall kaiju right outside. So you need to get the heck out of there. He's just like, I'm just gonna walk over here all casual like, because I don't give a crap, and walk off stage.
Yeah, he's really rough. I will say that the Japanese version of this film is much better because he is dubbed over, so it's easier to watch it because the voice actor who is dubbing him over is much better and puts much more feeling into the words. So I watched the Japanese version this time around. We watched the American version not too long ago, and yeah, I completely agree with you, but I did find that watching the Japanese version kind of helped with that, so I didn't find it as bad this time around.
Yeah, you watched the Japanese dub and with the English subtitles, and I watched the actual, I think it was the media. What's it called? The classic media version
Mhm.
with the English subtitles. That's the version I watched while you watched the Japanese version, and I regret it.
Yeah.
I regret it. So, but let me ask you really quick, since we're on this subject, and since I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here because I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. But if you had your druthers and you could replace him with anybody on the Toho roster, who would you replace him with?
Oh, I mean, shoot, you know me, Takarada.
I figured you were going to say
Yeah,
that.
Takarada in everything. No, actually, if they were going with the American, why not have Nick Adams? I mean, you brought back Kumi Mizuno from Frankenstein Conquers the World and have her play a different actor or a different character. I mean, in this, so why not bring Nick Adams back? Because Nick Adams always gives a great performance.
Yeah, Nick does, like, he's my favorite. I think he's my favorite and a lot of kaiju fans' favorite American actor that shows up in the Toho franchise, in the Toho films. But yeah, I would have definitely went with Nick Adams. I think Nick was doing another film at the time, or he was wrapping, or they were, when was this, 66?
Yeah, this was
So
66.
this would be after Astro Monster. Maybe he was doing another film here in the United States at the time, so they couldn't get him to do Gargantuas or something like that. I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe someone out there who's listening would be able to know the history. I know probably G-Man would know the history on that, on what actually was going on during that time that Nick could not come back for this film. I'd be interested to know that. But yeah, either Nick or even who's the guy from King Kong Escapes, the American actor, the American captain.
Oh,
Um,
I have to look that up because I can't remember
he
his
was
name. But yeah,
his last name was Reason. I cannot remember his
yeah.
first name.
Let me pull that up. I've got it right
Is
here.
it Rhymes? Not Rhymes Reason.
I think that sounds right. That sounds.
Or Rhodes Reason. It's Rhodes Reason.
Rhodes Reason. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Rhodes Reason as
Okay.
Commander Carl Nelson. Yeah.
Yeah. So even he would be a better choice than this guy.
Yeah.
That because at least Rhodes Reason put some acting behind what he did in King Kong Escapes.
Yeah, to me, well, Rhodes didn't shine in that movie to me so much, but that's mainly because I think Takarada stole the show from him.
Yeah.
But he wasn't bad. Yeah, I don't think he was.
If they wanted, the reason I say that is because if they wanted an actual American actor in the film, those are your two options.
Right.
Unless you pull someone, unless you pull an unknown from, say, Hollywood, or even a B-list or C-list celebrity from Hollywood. At that time, you could do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're going to do an all Japanese cast, obviously Takarada would be more than adequate to fill this role. But anyway, onto some acting that actually is enjoyable. And I want to talk about for a second Miss Kumi Mizuno, her character.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about how I really wish that they would have given her a more prominent role. Now, she is prominent throughout the film. She's seen in almost every shot where we see our human characters, but she's made to be a little bit I don't want to say weaker. What's the word I'm looking for, Travis? Not as, oh god.
Well, she doesn't have as much agency.
Yeah, that's okay.
In
That's
this,
a good way.
I would say, because a lot of things tend to happen to her. She's not really making a lot of decisions.
Yeah, that's it.
The decisions are made by the men, or especially block of wood guy. I don't even care. Russ Hamlin. So she doesn't really have a lot of agency in this film, whereas in Frankenstein versus Baragon, which she plays the same character essentially. It's not the same character, but it's the same type of character. But she was so much better in that, better written in that. And it's not Kumi Mizuno's fault. It's the
No,
way the
it's not.
character was written. It
Right.
was just so much better in Frankenstein versus Baragon. She had a lot more agency. She had a lot more.
Mhm.
Just she was so much more intricate or integral to the plot. Whereas this, she was kind of integral, but like I said, she just didn't have any agency.
Yeah, I just wish she would have had a little bit more say so in
Yeah.
her character, or not, maybe not say so, but a little more agency in her character where she was making some of those decisions or helping guide some of those decisions other than Block of Wood, Rust Hamlin, which, to be fair, is probably a legitimately good actor because he was in what, a West Side Story or something like that.
Yeah, he's been in some
Um,
decent movies. It's just he did not like this movie and didn't want
yeah.
to be in it, and so he didn't bother putting any effort into it. Um,
Oh,
one of
if
the thi-
Brad Pitt was only a little bit if Brad Pitt was only alive at the time, since he
yeah,
actually liked this movie.
yeah. Well, yeah. Brad Pitt said this was the first movie he ever saw in theaters. So, um, and another, and it's just a nitpick, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. But one of the
Sure.
things that gets me is that if you if you're going into this movie, it can, especially if you've watched Frankenstein Conquers the World, this one can be kind of confusing because it feels like it's a sequel, and it kind of is a sequel, but it's not a sequel.
Yeah, you're right.
And so there's moments like the whole thing with young Sonda, when they talk about how they were uh, dealing with this Frankenstein. They kept calling him Frankenstein. And they were experimenting on or studying him and everything, and then he escaped. They just kind of brushed that off really quickly. Like the whole backstory of how Sonda came to be, and then also, which also ended up turning how Gaira came to be. They just kind of rushed through that and brushed that off because that's stuff that was explored in Frankenstein Conquers the World. But this isn't a sequel to that. This is a standalone film, so it should have been. You should have took more time. You should have taken more time to develop like where Sonda came from and what he
Right.
was doing. How did they get him and to study him?
Yeah, the only real tie-in we got was the first, like, 5 or so minutes with the boat and the captain and the Odako, which is with the giant octopus,
Hmm.
in the rainstorm with the lightning, and that was the only real tie-in we had, and I think it would make to be fair, I think it would make a little bit more sense if we had gotten that alternate ending as the official ending
Hmm.
to Frankenstein Conquers the World, where the Odako pulls Frankenstein under the water. So then you could assume that maybe Frankenstein mutated into Gaira and he's still battling the Odako, or he's
Yeah.
still the Odako is his mortal enemy because the Odako is the one that defeated him and drug him into the water, because Gaira is obviously a water kaiju. Even though he is a humanoid,
You're right.
he's basically a fish man without being a fish.
Right. I think if they had made any kind of substantial connection between this movie and Frankenstein Conquers the World, it would have made the movie better. Um, you whether that's by having the original ending for Frankenstein Conquers the World, and so it ties it in through the Odako, whether they make Sonda actually the Frankenstein from the first movie and say
Mhm.
that everything that happened in the first movie happened and he just mutated and looks more, it looks different in this movie because of the events of the last movie. Just anything that would have substantially tied it together, because the ambiguousness of it makes it more confusing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of like, for me, as much as I love this film, if I was to introduce someone to, like, if I'm introducing someone to kaiju and to tokusatsu, I probably wouldn't use this film because it can be so confusing. I would rather use Frankenstein Conquers the World because it's more straightforward, whereas this just is kind of more ambiguous, and it takes a little bit. You have to kind of know the context of it to understand what's going on, and
I don't
so
know about that though. I kind of disagree with that because there's enough, or there's not a whole lot here where you could safely assume this is in its own continuity, it's in its own universe, that for some reason, like the beginning sequence, you can just safely assume that for some reason the boat just happened to sail up on a monster fight and then they got caught up in the middle of it. You could assume that.
Right.
I would not keep myself from showing this to somebody new to the fandom or new to kaiju,
well,
simply because of that reason.
Well, I don't mean I wouldn't show this to them ever, but it's just a matter of I would show them Frankenstein Conquers the World before I would show them this one, because this
Okay.
one, the ambiguousness, like I said, it's mostly to do with Sonda. It's mostly to do with the origins of Sonda, because
Mhm.
the origins of Sonda are explained in a press conference and in a flashback that combined take up less than 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
it's never really explained. Like, well, okay, where did he come from? Well, he's a Frankenstein. That doesn't explain it. Like, where does he come from?
Does
How
it
did?
specifically say Frankenstein in the movie? I can't remember.
Yes, yeah. In the Japanese version, it is he both of the monsters are called Frankensteins, and then it's later on that they give them the distinct names Sonda and Gaira.
Okay. Yeah, because in the American dub, it's just the green Gargantua and brown Gargantua, and I really don't think that there's any verbiage that says Frankenstein or even alludes to it being a
Right.
Frankenstein's monster at all. But like I said, that's in the classic media version that I
Right.
watched. So that I'm sure that the continuity is just a touch better in the actual Japanese version.
Yeah. But yeah, that the origin of Sonda is the thing that I think is the most I have the most trouble reconciling with when I show it to someone who's brand new and has, it's to tokusatsu. Because it's like that can be kind of confusing. I would still rather show Frankenstein Conquers the World before this one. But that's not saying I don't like this movie a lot. That's just a little nitpick that I had about it. Now,
Sure.
are you ready to get into some positives for the
Oh
movie?
yeah, let's do it. Let's get into some positive. Let's start with let's start with cinematography first. Before we get into some of the big themes of the movie, let's start with some of the cinematography and some of the shot choices that they made for this
Mhm.
film. The one that comes to mind first has to be the shot where it's the two fishermen on the boat
Mhm.
and I think they're bringing in their nets, and they look over the side of the boat and all you see is just Gaira just like at the bottom of this ocean staring back up at them. And
Oh yeah.
that is such a creepy shot. Like
It is
it's a
so good though. It's so he like Gaira is legitimately frightening, especially in that moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is that is a really good shot, and yeah, you're right. It is so scary.
Yeah, some of the long shots too, like the long shots of, of Gaira
uh
in the background as he's approaching as he's approaching the airport, as
oh
he's
yeah.
approaching civilization. Those are really good. A lot of the long shots that they showed in while they were in the forest.
Mhm.
The one shot specifically comes to mind. It's after Sanda rescues Gaira and they're washed up on the beach, or not, it's not a beach, but it's just sort of a lake shore there.
Mhm.
And Sanda is tending to Gaira's wounds. And just the way the shot is composed is really interesting because you've got Sanda and Gaira are there on the lake shore.
Mhm.
And then they're kind of framed by this tree line, and you've got the lake in the background, and it's just a really interesting the way they framed it there.
Yeah, yeah, it's really gorgeous. Let's talk about the actual suits and the actors within the suits,
Sure, yeah.
because one of the things I do love about these suits is that you're able to see the human eyes through the mask.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really helps sell the emotions that these monsters are going through, and we can talk about that in just a second when we talk about themes, but
Mhm.
they really, really sell the emotions Like these monsters never speak. They're not even actually making noise. Like the noises are added in post, but they're able in their body language and in their eyes to tell such a powerful emotional story. And I
Yeah.
think it's just so great. And Nakajima has said that of all the monsters that he has portrayed over the years, this one was his favorite because it gave him the freedom to move and to do things that he couldn't do in some of the bigger, more clunkier suits.
Mm-hmm. The both suits are, for the most part, they're fairly streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
Now, more so Gaira than maybe Sanda, because Sanda has that really muscular,
Yeah, the like shoulder
shou-
pads.
the shoulder pads and stuff.
Yeah.
That looks maybe a little that looks like it could have been a little bit cumbersome. But for the most part, these suits are very streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
They move extremely well, and I think I even told you. It was either I wrote it. I know it's in my notes here. I wrote it down, but I may have told you when we were just kind of talking between ourselves about it. I like it. I like humanoid kaiju, especially in films like this where there's a lot more movement. I feel like when you get these big elaborate suits, like say a Godzilla suit or Gigan or something else that's just big and cumbersome,
Destroya.
Destroy it, yeah. Or Space Godzilla. Space
Yeah.
Godzilla was notorious for this too. It just, to a point, yeah, they look big and powerful and interesting, but to a point, it doesn't really appear believable to me because there's such limited movement.
Mm-hmm.
Now for Sanda and Gaira, though, they were just so free to move that it made the fight scenes and it made just their interactions with humanity that much more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't a super fan of Gaira's moldy looking face, for the mask. Like he does look like he's kind of got like, I don't know, some kind of disease all over his face, which it might have been.
Algae.
Yeah. I think it was intentional, but he looked a little more gross, but I definitely, I liked Sanda. Sanda had the just stoic looking face, the kind eyes. It was just such a well done monster design.
Sanda looks wise.
Mm-hmm, yes, yeah, he does. And so let's talk about, we were talking about digging deep into these movies for themes or finding the themes in these movies. And the theme that comes through in this movie for me is the brotherly relationship between Sanda and Gaira.
Right.
They are so much like they're brothers at odds, and that is an age-old story of two brothers at odds, and just the relationship between them is so emotional and touching. Like there are very heartfelt moments where you can sense Sanda pleading with Gaira to just, stop what you're doing, don't do that. And the realization that Gaira is not going to stop, and then that he has to take it upon himself. Sanda has to take it upon himself to stop Gaira and destroy him.
Yeah,
It is such a powerful story,
and
it's done with guys in rubber suits with fake hair all over them. Like that is amazing that they were able to capture such a powerful emotional story.
Yeah, a lot of people draw very close correlations to this and sort of the Cain and Abel story from the Bible.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see that because like we said, or like you said, brother against brother that predates even that, I believe it, because that's just been a part of human nature for centuries. But that scene that really kind of stood out to me. Well, let me back up to, I think earlier in the movie, this is more for, I feel like this was put in there for more shock value than anything, where he eats his first human, and it doesn't show it necessarily, but it cuts away. He grabs the lady in the building,
right.
and then it cuts away, and then it shows him making a chewing motion, and he spits the dress out. And that was put in there to say, you know what, this Gaira is a lot different than the kaiju we've seen before, because up to this point, I don't believe we've seen kaiju actually eat people. Now
Right.
it's implied that people get hurt, that people get killed. That's that's obvious for any giant monster film, even though we don't actually see it happen.
Right.
The closest I think we even got to something like that at this point was Frankenstein Conquers the World, where we see Baragon raid the chicken coop, and you don't even really see him eat the chickens. It's just his head pops up 1 second and there's feathers coming out of his mouth. So it's implied that he ate the chickens. So it's implied in that moment that he ate that woman from the office building. And, that was more, I think, for shock value, just to set up that, Gaira is the real threat here. And it's interesting, that moment in the film where it's after the Mazer fight. It's when Sanda and Gaira retreat to the woods. There's sort of a lull. I don't know if it references any kind of time skip, how long these gargantuas had been missing for, and how long the military had been looking for them for. And then all of a sudden, Sanda shows up and sees what Gaira has done. And Gaira obviously wakes up, looks at Sanda, and it just falls back to sleep because he just doesn't care. He's just this soulless, moralless beast. And Sanda you can see it in his eyes, although there are limitations to the mask. You can see it in his eyes, just the disgust he has for his brother in that moment. And so you see him go through this internal conflict of, oh, okay, so I need to try to do something about this because my brother is not a good person. So what do I do? And so, he wakes them up, they wrestle for a little bit, and then Gaira runs off. And so Sanda has to go search for his brother. He has to track down his brother. Hurt. I'll add that he's hurt. His leg is hurt because, he hurt his leg trying to save Miss Mizuno. And he runs off into the woods to search for his brother because he feels like he knows what his brother is now. He knows that he is a danger to society. He has to do something to prevent that kind of thing from happening again, because I think I brought this up to you before we started recording, that Sanda, although he feels connected to his brother, he feels more love and compassion for humanity. And he has to do whatever it takes at this point to stop his brother from harming, innocent people.
Let's get into some fun facts. So you had a fun fact that you wanted to share with us, because the ending of the movie, spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, the ending kind of comes out of left field, doesn't really have a decent explanation in it, but you did some research.
I did. I went, I can't say I went full March Hand, but I went half March Hand. I went maybe three quarters March Hand. I don't know what that would be, what that would amount to, but okay. So yeah, at the end of the film, it's really interesting because, once the boys, we'll just call them the boys at this point. Once the boys, the Gargantuas, are fighting in Tokyo, they make it to Tokyo Bay. I think it's Tokyo Bay. I hope I'm correct on that. They make it to the seashore, and they fall into the water, or they escape into the water, or Gaira runs into the water, I believe is how it works. And Sanda goes after him. So they have to battle. And at this point they've already, Sanda's done all he could to stop his brother, or to prevent his brother, or to talk his brother out of being evil. So Sanda, like you said, has taken it upon himself to stop his brother at all costs. So, Gaira runs into the water. Sanda goes after him, and the military is just bombing them, or at least trying to bomb them to death with napalm and everything else. And then all of a sudden, it feels like out of nowhere that a volcano just erupts up out of the ocean, very close to shore. I might add, it feels very close to shore. And the going theory that I could find, I did a little bit of research trying to figure out if there is a going theory among the fans, or even if I could find some kind of official explanation. The best I was able to find was on a Toho Kingdom Reddit thread, where there's a fan theory that says that, since they're bombing the Gargantuas in the middle of the ocean, it actually causes an eruption from one of the tectonic plates that surrounds Japan. And it turns out, whenever I started digging a little bit deeper, that about 10% of the world's active volcanoes are found in or around Japan.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, so as we've probably seen over the last couple of years, or last few years rather, Japan is plagued by massive tsunamis and just earthquakes. They are prone to earthquakes in that region, and the reason for that is because Japan sits on or near the boundaries of four tectonic plates: the Pacific, the North American, the Eurasian, and the Filipino plates are what they're called. So it is plausible, and it's a theory that I'll probably now use for this film anyway, that because the military was bombing these two Gargantuas trying to stop them, they inadvertently maybe ruptured one of those plates or caused it to open up into a volcano, which eventually swallowed up the two Gargantuas. And it is implied that they both die. I think the Reddit thread I was kind of going through. I know Reddit is a very dangerous place, so I didn't go very far. But the thread I was reading it said that the plan was to leave them in hibernation and then maybe eventually bring them back to in another film. I don't know how they could have done that, because again, it's implied that they died, because I think even in the hospital, when Miss Mizuno is in the hospital, they come in and say, I think they asked the question, are they dead? Are they dead?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we cannot confirm yet, but we believe so. So I think that's the theory that I'm going with. That sounds the most plausible, because that volcano does feel like it just comes up out of nowhere. And that's one of the reasons, aside from, Rust Hamlin and the infamous song, and the volcano, those are the three main reasons why people say they don't particularly like this film, or it ranks a little bit lower on their list. And honestly, I just kind of find that a little bit unfair, because it wouldn't make more sense for them just to wrestle and then eventually just sink down into the ocean and let it be implied that they drowned, or they're still under there fighting or something of that nature, and they could possibly come back. The volcano feels more final to me. So that's just sort of how I feel about it. That's the theory that I'm going to go with, that the military, was bombing them to the point where it did erupt a tectonic plate that turned, or possibly a volcano that swallowed them up. But there was a really interesting, I think you found an alternate ending or something. Travis?
Well, the thing about that is, I was going to say, even on Wikizilla, they do in the plot breakdown of the movie, they do say that the napalm that the military was dropping on is what triggers so this is like a widely accepted thing, but nowhere in the film does it actually say that.
Right.
So it is just one of those headcanon things that you have to just accept.
Yeah.
But the original ending of the film, they were still going to have Sonda and Gaira swallowed up by the underwater volcano. But after that happened, the lava was going to consume and flood Tokyo and completely wipe out Tokyo. But they just never did that.
Sure.
And that was cited from an interview with Ishiro Honda himself that was in a book. That was the original ending for that, was that Tokyo was going to be destroyed, which brings up another thing we didn't touch on in themes, but the theme of, or at least the exploration of how the monsters in this movie showed more emotions and more care than the humans. Now, Kumi Mizuno's character, she obviously had a lot of affection and care and concern for Sonda, but as far as the military and the rest of the people, you really see how just robotic and just deliberate and uncaring their decisions are when it comes to destroying Sonda and Gaira. They don't care about whether it's a good one or a bad one. They just want to destroy them. And then you pair that with the images of Sonda and the just deep emotion that you get through his facial expressions and his eyes and his acting, his body language and stuff. So I think that original ending kind of was Honda's way of saying this was humans' punishment for being so uncaring towards these monsters that obviously had emotions and had their own feelings. That's the way I interpret that, but that is interesting that that's the original ending. Another fun fact that I wanted to bring up is that this movie, the story, is loosely based on an old Japanese legend or story from Japanese mythology. It's called Umahiko and Yamahiko.
Okay.
Which are basically the mountain brother and the ocean brother, or the sea brother. And it's about two brothers. One lived up in the mountains and one lived down by the sea. And the one that lived in the mountains was a hunter. The one that lived down by the sea was a fisherman. And then at one point they decide to switch roles, and the fisherman goes to hunt and he's no good at it. And the hunter goes to fish and he ends up losing the other brother's favorite hook, and it causes some drama between them. And there's the story goes into a lot more detail, but just like that's the story. And so it is kind of there is this relationship, brotherly relationship going on in that old mythology that is brought over into this idea. And that explains why Sonda is from the mountains and Gaira is from the sea.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Other little fun fact that I want to get to before we get into our final thoughts is that this movie technically takes place in the same continuity as Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS, because at the beginning of one of those movies they reference monster attacks that have been happening, and in the flashbacks they show a scene from this movie.
Yeah, it's Tokyo SOS because it's I think even Miss Mizuno, doesn't she come back for that one too? She's she's the prime minister at that time, or or defense minister or something. She references Gaira. She doesn't reference. I don't believe she references Sanda, but she references Gaira. I know specifically as one of the disaster monsters.
There's a lot of other little fun facts, but those are the main ones that I found interesting. And so, yeah, I like that it's in the continuity with it's because you never see Gaira and Sonda actually in a Godzilla movie other than using stock footage for that one.
And the maser attack, like we talked about earlier, but the maser, this is the first time the masers get used. And so I think even the maser attack in the forest is used over and over again in several
stock footage.
Yeah, as stock footage. So yeah, and I think the only other time Sanda and Gaira show up that I know of is actually in the Godzilla comics. It doesn't show up again in any film after this.
Yeah, and they also show up in a TV show as not the same exact monsters.
Oh, but Go Godman, is that right?
So yeah, Sonda and Gaira show up in that, and so they show up a few times, but yeah, you never really get them in an actual Godzilla movie. But
although
that's the
Godzilla versus the Gargantuas probably would have been a super interesting thing.
And that they wanted to do that movie, but they never got around to it. It's one of those lost movies that just never made the light of day. So let's quickly move into our Godzuki score and our final thoughts.
Sure.
So for anybody who's new to the podcast, we like to rate our movies out of 5 Godzukis because we embrace the silly side of giant monster movies and use Godzilla's bumbling nephew from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon of the 70s as our yardstick for measuring these movies. And so, Michael, I wanted to ask you, out of 5 Godzukis, what do you score this movie, and what are your final thoughts on it?
5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 because even though this movie does have flaws, and we've talked about them, fairly lengthily. I guess that's a
Mhm.
word. Did I make up a brand new one? But anyway, we've talked about them at length during this conversation. It does have its flaws, Rust Hamlin, the volcano. I'm not going to hold that against this movie because you're right. The Japanese version, although it has all of these same things in it, it does do them better.
Mhm.
Especially Rust Hamlin's character. It does handle that better. You are correct on that. So I was going to take away a half score just for him alone, but since the Japanese version rectifies that, I can't hold that against him. The song, although, it is what it is, and of course the volcano. Now that I kind of understand the going theory about that, it does make sense, and I appreciate it more.
Yeah.
But this film is super interesting. I know it, like we talked about it. The Cain and Abel references get brought up a lot for this film. Brother against brother is an age old concept. It's used in movies, not just kaiju movies. It's used in almost every movie genre out there. And it just really explores, to me, sort of what it means to be human, because you watch, like we talked about, you watch the sort of the actual human characters kind of play it real straight down the middle. There's the doctor, the concerned doctor, and then the military people who act exactly as you would expect military people do. And then of course you've got the monsters, Gaira and Sanda, who act at times more human than the actual human characters. And so
Mhm.
it does beg the question, what does it really mean to be human? Because you do see Sanda, show some sense of internal conflict and morality when it comes to his brother. And I said it, but I'll just kind of repeat it here. The internal conflict that Sanda goes through about his brother, about what to do about his brother being the way he is super interesting and impactful. I'll say that, because you do see the emotion on Sanda's face when he realizes that his brother is just not a good person, for lack of a better word. It's just
Mhm.
he cannot survive in this world any longer. Something has to be done to stop him, and that is an internal conflict that you see play out with Sanda throughout the remainder of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I've been going back and forth on whether I wanted to give it 4.5 Godzukis because of the things that we talked about. But I settled on 5 out of 5 for me too.
Okay.
Because because it's my score and who cares if I give it 5 out of 5, and but also because the way I rate movies and the way I do it is if there's anything I would change in the movie. And yes, I did mention some nitpicks that I have, and yes, there are a few little things that they could have done differently, but the story that we got in this movie, I wouldn't want to change it. I wouldn't want to change anything about this film because I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed what they gave me. The story of the two brothers at odds is one of the oldest stories in recorded history. This film takes that very human story and brings it into the world of kaiju in a very dynamic way. The monster suits are dated by today's standards, but they allow the actors to use their eyes and body language to convey the deep emotions that both monsters are feeling. There is little I can say negatively about this movie, and most are just minor nitpicks. Overall, there is a reason this film is celebrated by so many people, both in and outside of the kaiju community, because it is a movie that is praised even outside the kaiju community. And so while I'll freely admit that it's not perfect, no movie is ever really perfect, but the movie feels complete in a way that not a lot of movies do. And so because of that, I give it 5 out of 5.
And you know what? I like that.
We don't, even though we don't take ourselves and our rating system all that seriously, because rating systems are kind of, they're people get too pedantic about them, so I don't really care. 5, 4.5, 3, whatever. I don't really care. It's more about the discussion of the movie that I like the most. So that's why we have fun with it with our Godzuki scores. But yeah, even with that, mentality, we still don't give a lot of 5 out of 5s. So yeah, that's something. All right. So are you ready to move into the next segment of the
Absolutely.
podcast?
All right, let's
So,
do it.
you know what time it is? It's time for Kaiju Clash!
Kaiju Clash! Fight!
So our last Kaiju Clash, I did share it on Twitter to let people know what the results were, because we're recording so far in advance that the actual we didn't discuss it in any of the episodes previous to this. But the Kaiju Clash results from the last one that we did was Gamera won by 39 not by 39 votes, with 39 votes, which was equated to 55% of people voted for Gamera over Gigan, the Showa era versions. And
Can we insert a little "I told you so" voiceover in this? Can we do that? And Travis, will you please remind the folks about what the actual score so far is between us two?
It's true.
What was that? Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's 2-1.
2-1.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, and I don't mean to knock your abilities to defend the kaiju that you are defending, but most of the people voting on these have not even listened to our episodes to see what our arguments are for it. So most people are using their own judgment on this.
Okay, so look. Because I trust my groupie members, my Kaiju groupie members from the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. I trust them. I feel like they're very smart, capable, intelligent people. And I am so happy that they voted overwhelmingly positive for Gamera.
There were a few that was still for me. Actually, the Facebook group was the closest that we had, because it was only 3 votes difference, because Gamera had 26 votes and Gigan had 23, so only 3 votes difference between Gamera and Gigan in that
Yeah,
one.
you're right. You're right. I'm overselling it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I will admit I am overselling it just a little bit. You know me, Travis. I have a taste for the eccentric.
Okay. Well, this time around, we're going to have a clash between two monsters. One we've actually been talking about this whole episode mostly. And because following our rules that we set up, that the loser goes first each time around, I get to go first on this one.
Again.
Yeah, again. So, this time around, we are pitting Gaira against King Kong. Now, the King Kong that we're pitting against Gaira is specifically the Toho King Kong Escapes.
Wait, hang on. You told me I was allowed to use Legendary Kong.
No. And I'll tell you why. There's a really good reason why I specifically chose not just Toho in general, but specifically King Kong Escapes King Kong to pit against Gaira. Haruo Nakajima plays Gaira, and Haruo Nakajima plays King Kong in King Kong Escapes.
Okay.
So it's Nakajima versus Nakajima.
It's because you were scared of those lightning hands is what it was.
Hey, Gaira can, you know what? I'm going to get into it. Gaira can handle some high-powered electricity, because we just watched this movie, the masers and the high voltage attacks that they used. Yeah, it weakened him. Yeah, it kind of, hurt him a little bit, but he still recovered from that. He has this fantastic regenerative powers that if anyone is a fan of comic books, his regenerative powers are better than even Wolverine's. He can regenerate his entire body from a single cell. He is an excellent hand-to-hand fighter, and he can survive underwater, which, if I'm remembering right, let's see, where does King Kong live? He lives on an island surrounded by water.
Yeah. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Move on from that.
All right. But he takes plenty of direct hits from rockets and cannons, and I'll get into some more. I'll let you defend your, King Kong now. But that's my opening arguments.
Those are all very valid points, Travis. Those are valid points. But I hate to get into the personal attacks, but I'm just not seeing how Gaira is all that smart. He just doesn't look like a smart kaiju to me.
Okay, Gaira was the smartest person in that entire movie because he went to eat that woman who was singing that song. He was the only person who wanted to shut that woman up who was singing that terrible song. So he is smarter than everyone else in that movie.
And okay, so that's fair, and I'll just bring it up. Since you brought that up, I will go ahead and concede that one of King Kong's main weaknesses is women. Let's just face it, it's one of his main weaknesses. It's women. He's just like that. But Kong is smart. Kong is very smart. In fact, he's so smart that I think that he could even convince Gaira to jump into that volcano himself. He could just talk Gaira into it. Just like, you know what, Gaira, go jump into that volcano. There's lots of goodies in that volcano. Go ahead and jump in there.
No. Sonda, Gaira's brother, couldn't even convince him to stop eating people. You're talking about King Kong convincing him to jump into a volcano? No, that is ridiculous. Yes, King Kong's biggest weakness is his relationship with humans, especially women, because he is constantly getting distracted. You know what Gaira doesn't care about? Humans. He will eat them, he will stomp on them, he will push them out of the way. He doesn't give a crap about human life. And so he will charge in and with those teeth and with that brute strength, take King Kong down.
I'm glad you said brute strength. Because King Kong also has brute strength. Anyone who can pry the jaws apart from a massive dinosaur like Gorosaurus has to have some kind of grip strength and some kind of upper body strength to stand up to Gaira. And I'm going to say that, Kong is not that slow. You saw him, if we're talking about Toho Kong specifically in King Kong Escapes, in that movie, he was quick. He was up and on his feet in no time when he was battling Gorosaurus. And Gorosaurus is no slouch. I want to say that Gorosaurus would even defeat Gaira. And if Kong was able to defeat Gorosaurus, obviously Kong can defeat Gaira with even more brute strength. You look at that upper body of Toho Kong from King Kong Escapes. He is a beast. He is built. He is stacked. Gaira, he has a dad bod. I just don't think Gaira can stand up to the raw brute strength power of Kong.
But the one thing I keep coming back to is his regenerative powers. How is King Kong going to defeat that? Because no matter how strong King Kong is, he cannot blast Gaira down to where he eliminates every single cell in his body.
To be fair, though, even by the end of that film, even by the end of War of the Gargantuas, Gaira was still pretty bloodied and scarred up. He can't regenerate that quickly. It would all really depend on situational. It would really depend on the situation for these two, and it would depend on how quickly Gaira could recover. I don't think Gaira could really even recover quick enough to handle just the onslaught of punches and kicks and bites and just the brute power of Kong. And let's just not and let's don't forget, Kong is smart enough too to use weapons. We don't see Gaira use a whole lot of weapons. Yeah, he throws around a few trees, he throws around a few tanks. Yeah, that's fine. But Kong is able to lift huge boulders, these massive mountain-sized boulders that can just bash Gaira over the head. And I wouldn't put it past my boy Kong to just shove a tree down Gaira's throat either. If he wants
Hey, wrong movie.
if
wrong
he
movie.
wants to eat something, Gaira can eat a tree.
Well, all I have to say is all Gaira has to do is get King Kong in the water, and then it's all over because Gaira can survive underwater. We saw that. And so, and we know King Kong is willing to go into the water because he went into the water going after the characters in King Kong Escapes and ended up fighting the sea snake that was there. So King Kong is not afraid of water. He'll go into the water, and once he touches the water, it's all over. Gaira's dragging him down to the bottom of the water, and goodbye, Kong.
Okay, so we can probably do this all day long, but
Absolutely.
Travis, do you want to tell the folks how they can help us decide who wins here?
Yes, so you can now decide who wins between Gaira and King Kong by going to our social medias. We will be posting it on Twitter, a poll that will be running for probably about a week after this, when this episode comes out, that you can vote on. You can also check out the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group and see a poll that we have on there too, and cast your votes. And also you can comment and reply to us and let us know who you think wins and why. And should we have brought up a better argument for some of these things? I didn't even bring up the fact that King Kong got knocked out by a knockout gas.
Whoa.
So
No. Hang on. We're already past the argument.
Okay.
We made your arguments.
Okay. So check out Kaiju Weekly on Twitter, at Kaiju Weekly, and you can also check out us on the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group to check out. And we will also be posting this as a video, separate little special video on the YouTube channel. So check out the Kaiju Weekly YouTube channel, and you can also comment on that and let us know what you think, who would win in this fight.
Sure.
All right. So the only thing I think we got to do now is just ask the trivia question for next week's episode. We are continuing into our Titans of Toho month, and we're going to be covering another great Toho movie that I've never seen before. So the trivia question is, which Toho monster predates the original Gojira film by over 1,000 years?
I had to look this one up too. I was like, what are we watching? But then I saw it and I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this monster that appears in Toho films in real life predates the original Gojira film from 1954 by over 1,000 years. So if you know the answer, reach out to us and give us your answer, and we will give you a shout out in the episode. I don't know if we'll still be recording ahead for that episode, but if we are, then I'm sorry I can't give you a shout out, but that still doesn't mean you can't comment on our Twitter and on Facebook. All right, so thank you to everyone for listening to this episode. If you want to follow the podcast on social media, we are at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter and at Kaiju Weekly Pod on Instagram. You can send questions, comments, or answers to trivia questions to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. You can also find us at the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. Also follow at Kaiju Groupie Pod and the Kaiju Groupie on Twitter and Instagram. That's Michael. And a big thank you, or Sergeant Pepper, as I called him. And we also want to say a big thank you to Brian, Shijir, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. You can also support the podcast at patreon.com/Kaiju Weekly Pod, or just by leaving us a review on iTunes or whatever it's called now. It's not called iTunes anymore. The app. You can do it just in the app.
You mean Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, Apple Podcasts. Yeah, that thing. And so until next time, I'll say help control the Gargantua population. Have your Gairas spayed or neutered.
The words get stuck in my throat.
The
words get stuck in my throat. Okay, that's enough. Thanks, guys, for listening. If you're still here.